Hi guys, Vince here once again, and today I'm going to be talking and reviewing a show which you all may have heard of, Twin Peaks. So I came across Twin Peaks a number of times actually in comparison to The X-Files, which is another show which I'm actually a pretty big fan of and have watched extensively. So I came in with fairly high hopes and really hoping to sort of find an X-Files replacement for a number of the episodes that I've watched over the years from that. A lot was made of the comparisons in terms of characters. You know, if you think about the main characters of Twin Peaks, along with Mulder and Scully, and the supposed supernatural elements of Twin Peaks, along with obviously the X-Files. However, I've come to realise very quickly that actually they're two very different animals, and in my opinion, meet very different needs from the viewer's perspective. So it's going to be a pretty straightforward view, and I really just review rather, and I want to just put some points across and really put those across ahead of the upcoming season 3 of Twin Peaks, which will be coming out. So I thought this would be quite timely. So first of all, there's quite a few positives for me. A number of very good characters. I think the range that is shown and the town that we meet and all the people we meet feel authentic. The characters stand out to me. There's none that I really thought were particularly weak. However, I have to say a number of them did feel a little bit generic and didn't really have, they felt a little bit kind of almost too typical to what you would sort of expect of a typical simple middle-of-the-road American town. However, given that it is quite a dated show now, and we're talking back to the early 90s, if I'm not mistaken, I think that can be forgiven up to a point. I think the atmosphere that they create overall and the time that they spend to get things going and to make you see these characters' lives and how they function and overall, effectively, the ecosystem they're in is good, and it does pay off, and it makes these characters feel real, and it adds to the value of them, and it does add to the genuine sense of intrigue and curiosity that you have for what's going on and getting to the bottom of it, and what is this all driving towards. So that really helps, and I think the atmosphere was really great, and it's one of the better shows I've come across for generating that. Another thing which Twin Peaks is also very famous for is the music and its ability to create that atmosphere and continuously build things up, and not just to use music, in fact, but the general sounds. One of the things that I noticed while watching the show is you can hear stuff like ship containers and other stuff in the background while they're filming, while they're talking. You know, it's a really impressive attention to detail, which I haven't really come across. It's only very few other shows have really replicated that. And what this really all combines to create is this sense that you're not just visiting Twin Peaks, it's not just a backdrop or a setting like in a lot of other shows, it's actually, you're there. You really feel like you're in the town, you're watching these people live their lives, and it does make you care for them, it makes it all feel that much more authentic. A lot of these characters as well, some more than others, are very wacky and have their own nuances and things that they're doing. In some cases, again, they feel a little bit overdone, and it's a little bit kind of hammy, as some say. It can almost feel a little bit cheap at times. But again, I think given that it was a dated show, and if I'm not mistaken, it was actually set in the 80s, so it's effectively a dated show, trying to be a more dated show, if that makes sense. So I think sometimes that can come off the wrong way, to me at least. But what it also adds to is the sense that there's this numerous subplots here, and these characters are very different and diversified. And there's the log lady, for example, is a very strange character, but she's there and she does her own thing. And because they're consistent with it and they commit time to that character, particularly if you have the DVDs in my case, you actually see a number of the different things she's doing, and you do wonder if there is a greater depth to her and her value to her as a character rather than just some sort of distraction. And overall, again, it just sort of helps generate this lore. I do have a number of cons here as well, and what's actually interesting is that, probably for the first time ever, for me at least, in reviewing things, most of the pros I mentioned would actually also very much count as cons, and vice versa, depending on how you look at things. So I'll expand on that more in a moment, but I'll just sort of look at those cons right now. So the first of which I would point out, and some episodes are much worse than others with this, but the pacing, it can feel incredibly slow at times. It really does, and you really just sort of wonder if they're going anywhere with what they're doing, and when are we going to get to this next point, and how are we going to do things, and you almost forget where you are in the show at times, particularly because it's just so slow moving at times, and it really starts to feel quite aimless at some points for me. Particularly with modern television, and you think about some of the greats, like some Breaking Bad, The Wire. And even in other not top level shows, you can always feel where they're going, and you're always interested in the next step and kind of how they're going to get out of this and how they're going to figure stuff out. The numerous subplots they have, particularly in the first season, so I am reviewing this in the first season, don't forget, they don't really seem to go anywhere meaningful. And although you can argue, again, this sort of feeds into my point a moment ago, that yes, it helps generate this atmosphere, and it helps make these characters feel real, and it generates a sense of value to them, and you care about what happens to them and their relationships inside the overall town and plot. If you're not invested in that, and if you just want to find out what's happening, it can just feel tedious at times, because I frankly didn't care about some of these characters, and I thought, okay, well, you're clearly an ancillary character. I don't care about you. I want to focus on the main plot. And for me, that just it felt a little bit aimless and pointless. I know that's quite brutal, but that's how it felt. Whereas in most shows, there is effectively one major plot point or two major plot points per episode, depending on what genre and sort of show you're looking at, and they serve as the main kind of tracks, if you will, to keep things going and keep you going towards this final payoff. And keeping your interest and keeping things going, and then the characters develop and they move forward and they change as you go along those tracks. Here, it's almost as though it's a coincidence that someone's died at times. It's ridiculous. And I'm not revealing anything, because if you watched any of the show, you'd clearly you'd be aware of that very quickly, and it's actually in the synopsis, if I'm not mistaken. So that's quite annoying, really. You just sort of feel like you've almost been tricked into watching the show on the basis of this one premise of the synopsis, and then all of a sudden it's about this other thing, and it's about this guy's marriage, and it's about this failed relationship, and it's about this guy who's cheating on someone else, and all this other stuff, and you're just like, what the hell is going on? I just want to know about this main plot point. And that, again, it was just annoying for me. I just wanted to focus on the main plot points. I don't, the other stuff's nice, sort of allude to it a little bit, great. You don't need to spend so much time on them. And a final point, and again, I'll be hesitant in criticising this too much because it is quite dated. Some of the more dramatic points where they really are clearly trying to drive things home and build that value and make people care about things, they kind of fell flat for me, really. In fact, they did fall flat, and they didn't completely miss the mark, but I just didn't feel the kind of impact that it was clearly trying to deliver. Some of that is clearly technology or how they're looking to pull that together. But at the same time, there are some pretty old films and TV shows that managed to do that fine. And it was disappointing, as the main plot point and how they developed that was something I was genuinely interested in, how that develops and who's responsible and who are these characters that they need to meet and to move things forward. So moving back to what I mentioned earlier briefly, comparing the Twin Peaks to X-Files. As I said, they serve two very different needs, and just to expand on that point, Twin Peaks, and this is probably going to sound like a ridiculous comparison, but I'll go with it anyway. Twin Peaks is sort of like a nice restaurant in your hometown. You go there because it feels familiar and warm, and you feel like you know what to expect and you recognise those faces. Whereas X-Files is like a trendy bar. You go there because you want something that's gonna wake you up and be interesting and sort of take you out of your world and put you somewhere interesting for that hour or a couple of hours. And the reason I say that is because Twin Peaks has these different meandering things, plots and things that are moving forward that you just sort of see, and they kind of go at their own pace. Whereas X-Files is episodic, of course, and yes, there's some major things which are moving forward, but this episode, we're in this town, and this guy is a serial killer, and there's a monster in this town, and then there's all this other stuff. And it's very much, here's the start, here's the end, here's the payoff. And it's that formula, and that works so much better for me. personally, and I think a lot of other people, which is what owes to X-Files' longevity and its formula, which has, of course, become very formulaic, and is what X-Files is fundamentally known for so much now. So ultimately, it's impossible to compare the two too much, and I think it's kind of ridiculous that people do, in all honesty. But what I will say to really wrap up is that Twin Peaks, for me, is very much, it's very divisive. Again, you know, those strong points and weak points, and it's something that, to my understanding, has a very much a cult following, and I can kind of see why, because it is something you either very much buy into or you don't. Now, you know, you either fall in love with the quirkiness and the nuances and the pacing and all that stuff, or you don't. And unfortunately for me, it's the latter. I can totally see why someone over that mindset would really like this and really be engaged and buy in. So I don't judge people on that. You know, you do you and I'll do me. For me personally, I'm going to have to give this a 6.5, which isn't a terrible score by any means, but it's not a fantastic one either. However, for those who are into the more artistic, slow-paced drama, soap, we call them soaps here in the UK, just sort of weekly episodic things where stuff's happening every week and things move forward, and then every now and then something dramatic happens, but it's almost coincidental. If you're into that stuff and you do care about more of the nuance and I guess what I would say is the artistic side, then I would push this up to an 8.3, because I can very much see what they're doing and how that would be achieved. It's just very much a question of whether you're that sort of person. So those are my scores. I try not to do two different scores unless there's a good reason to, and I feel it does split people down the middle in some respects. But those are the scores. I think that's a fair judgment, certainly on the first season. I did actually start the second season, believe it or not, but I stopped simply because the first episode was so slow, and there's 30 episodes in the second season, if I'm not mistaken, of 45 minutes, and I just thought, wow, if this is episode 1, if this is what they're saying the intent is, then holy shit, basically. And I thought, fuck that. My girlfriend, funny enough, is actually watching them right now, and she said it does pick up. So I might try and commit to that and do a follow-up review for season 2 ahead of the third season being released. But don't hold me to that just yet. I have a lot of other things to do before I sink that kind of time into season 2. So I hope this review's been useful for you guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Drop any comments down below. I'm sure people will have something to say regarding my feedback here. Be happy to hear it. I'm not saying I have the final verdict by any means. And yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time. Cheers.